Have you ever had the feeling of looking really successful on the outside, but feeling super stuck on the inside? Coming up on our Finding Better podcast, episode 161, David Prosper is joining me, and we're going to talk about getting you unstuck and creating clarity in your life. He's realized over the years that most people don't lack ambition, they lack clarity. And we're going to talk about that. It's an amazing conversation. We're going to talk about the messy middle. What is a messy middle? It's that gap, it's that chasm between where you are today and where you want to be. And we're going to show you, and he's going to give you ways to be able to create that clarity in your life for your purpose and design the life you want and the life you can love and not just live by default. It's an amazing conversation. Please share this. You're going to want to rewind this and listen to it because every time you do, you're going to get something different. Okay, here we go. Hello, 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 and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I'm your host. And this is where we talk about real life experiences. We don't talk about academics. We don't talk about opinions. We don't talk about theories. We talk about real life experiences and wisdom of people who have been there and done that, because I found that you can learn something from everybody. And today we're going to talk about life. We're going to talk about going from confusion to clarity and designing a life you love. Designing the life you love, not living a life that you're living by default, right? But consciously designing a life that you love. My guest today is David Prosper, and he is a clarity coach. He's a speaker. He's the author of Finding Clarity, a guide to peace, purpose, and prosperity. And this is really deep stuff, right? And one of the things I say all the time is that happiness is not out there. We all think that happiness is out there somewhere, right? Happiness is right here, right? It's inside of you. And folks like David are going to give us his perspective and his experiences on his journey on finding that. And one of the things, that he says that after years of chasing achievement, which we all do, right, without any real fulfillment, he realized that most people aren't lacking ambition, they're lacking clarity. Ooh. And, that wake up call led him to create Clarity Catalyst Solutions, which is a platform where he helps leaders, entrepreneurs, and creators break free from hidden stagnation and start living intentionally. That's a really powerful word. And one of the things that he said is that he loves having real human conversations about the messy middle. And that's what we're going to have today. And it's that part that nobody talks about. And through that, we're going to offer practical tools. He's going to offer practical tools to help you move from confusion to confidence. David, welcome to Finding Better.
Thank you so much, John, for having me. That was literally one of the best intros I've ever had. I was like, is that about me? Like, so the way you've done it as a host, I just want to give you your flowers and say you are great at what you do. That was beautiful.
Oh my God. It's easy to do it, easy to do this when you do it from your heart, right? And that's
Mm.
that's what I love about the conversation you and I are going to have. And so tell us. Okay, so first of all, the ultimate question out there in terms of clarity and finding clarity is what's my purpose? Why am I here? Why why am I on this planet, right? And we won't necessarily get to that point, but you know what? I mean, living with intention is a step towards that direction and figuring all that out. So, what was your journey? You start off with someone who knows what it feels like to look successful on the outside, but feels stuck on the inside. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And the journey started like growing up in the projects of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And
Mm.
the biggest thing for me was to get out of the projects. And how I was able to do that was play college football and run track. And that allowed me to be exposed to different opportunities. And what happened was I started to achieve these success and these accolades and these awards. But what I would look, the awards would feel good in the moment, just like, man, I'm accomplished. And they would collect dust. And then
Ah,
as I moved into the corporate world and sales and achieving all of these numbers and metrics and being top five stores, top five producers, when I would leave that company and do something else or move, like none of that carried with me. And what I started seeing was this pattern is like I'm achieving all these great things in the moment. It should be celebratory, but I felt empty inside. Like, who am I? What is my purpose? What am I here to do? And what I'm doing isn't really bringing the aliveness in me. So I went on a journey of just like, all right, God, what's my purpose? What am I here to do?
okay. So
And
before we go on
yeah.
to that, okay, I just want to say that probably every person who just listened to what you said can identify and relate to what you just talked about, right? I mean, because our world is a world of achievement. Our world is what have you done for me lately?
Mhm.
Our world is, getting out there and achieving and then starting all over again, right? I just want to ask you one question though. You said that you started out in the projects of Fort Lauderdale. That's a tough place to get your start, right? And oh, how did you, you know, I I have my own vision of what it's like in the projects, right? But how did you get out? What was it about you that caused you to say, I want to get out of here, right? Because there's so many people that don't.
Yeah.
And, that's such a disadvantaged environment to start from. So
Yeah.
what happened? What is it about you that made that happen?
It's a question that it's like making it out. There's a thing called survivor's guilt. And it's just like, well, I survived. How come so many other people didn't? And I wouldn't say
Wow.
there's nothing really special about me. The only thing that separate myself and my siblings and those I grew up with is we all got the same lessons, but the difference was I applied it. And when
Okay.
when when speakers and authors would come into our schools and talk about the possibility, that I was like, oh, like this is amazing. Because what I'm living in, homelessness or moving from home to home, or seeing crime and seeing violence and people getting shot and police constantly in our neighborhoods, I was like, I don't want to live like that, like constantly on edge, where we're sleeping and the sirens go off and it's just like, is it our home that the police is coming to or our neighbor home? And so it was like I would hear these speakers and these visionaries come into our space and talk about the possibility. And I was like, what if that's my story? If I apply what they're saying, could I get out of this? And the difference between myself and everyone else in that space um was applying it. And sports saved my life. So I grew up, I would steal from the corner stores and go to 7-Eleven, and my friends and I was always a leader, but I was a bad leader. And I would like have my friends
Oh my gosh.
steal a couple of food, and I would like distract the cashier, and then we would leave. And then and that's how we made money. So we would go back to school and sell the things that we stole. And there was this one lady in 7-Eleven, she said, you can either put it back or you can go to jail. And I was like, I'm gonna put this back. And my mom put me in sports, and that got me off of the streets. And I couldn't hang out with my friends anymore because I had to go to practice.
Oh,
And sports
whoa.
literally saved my life. It saved my
You
life.
know, I say this to people all the time, and you've heard this, that information is not power. It's
Mhm.
the application of information that's power, right?
Yeah,
Like you said, everybody else heard what you heard and saw what you saw and listened to the people you listened to, but you took it and applied it.
yeah,
And that's what made the difference. And so your mom, God bless her, she got you into sports.
yeah.
And yay, mom, right?
Rest in
Because
peace. And yes, mom. Yes,
what if you're not doing something productive, you're going to do something unproductive with your time.
that's
So
inevitable.
then you got into football and you got into track and field.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
And then it taught me discipline, and it taught me teamwork, and it taught me, and that gave me the courage to, because my mother was a pastor when she was alive, so that gave me the courage to run for youth vice president at the age of 14. And then I learned like leadership skills, and people started like, okay, this guy is, he's curious, he's taking action. So people started taking me under, my leaders started taking me under their wings. So that was like, that was the precursor of, okay, like I'm seeing a lot of things that are inefficient and ineffective, but people aren't seeing this. And I'm like, hey guys, can we make this better? And I was like, what's that? The problem? I'm like, this right here. So that became like this new obsession of like, how can we get people to see the problem, acknowledge it, but take solutions? So like at the age of 14, I was
You're
leading a
14.
group.
This is when
I was 14. Yeah, and I'm leading a
yeah,
group of
that's
like
amazing.
adults. And I'm like, guys, let's strategize this. And they're just like, what is he on? I was like, you guys don't see it? And it's like, no, I don't see the problem. I'm like, okay, let me draw this out for you. So I started
Wow.
designing and architecting in like how we can move from a youth group that is like 10 to 15, and we can grow. So like that was always an obsession of mine. So I was like, I know the path because it's obvious what I thought was obvious, and I would just support the people around me and get us to that destination. So football and sports got me there.
I'll tell you something. A very dear friend of mine once told me that one of my superpowers is that I say the things no one else wants to say, and I ask the questions no one else wants to ask.
I can see
so,
that. I can
so,
see that.
so I'm a big mouth, right? But you're the same way, right? I mean, you just described yourself
Yeah.
as a 14-year-old who saw things that were wrong. Now, most 14-year-olds are going to go, "Wow, the adults know better. There must be a reason for this." But yeah, not you, right? You said, dudes, we have something we can improve here that we can make better, and you took the ball and you ran with it. That's amazing. So, so how did you decide to um, write your book? What was it about your life that led you to writing your book and being a clarity coach?
It was again growing up in dysfunction, and I would see a lot of people in my community, like they were so educated, they were intelligent. If you talk to them, you're like, wow, they're articulate. They know what they're talking about, but they didn't take any steps forward. So, like you were saying, knowledge isn't power, but applied knowledge is power.
Yep.
So it was it was a gap. So I saw a gap of knowledge to transformation, and I was like, what's that gap? It's clarity in the next step to go there. And as I thought about this
Ooh, wait,
book,
wait, 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 wait,
yeah,
wait, wait. You saw the gap, and the solution was clarity.
yes,
The solution to close that gap was clarity on getting from where you are to getting to the other side.
yes.
Okay, then what?
And then I became obsessed with clarity, and it's a very common word, but sometimes the meaning kind of loses its essence around different groups of people. So I simplify clarity as knowing how to do it, when to do it, and why you're doing it. And then it's like the GPS of the navigation, because life is always going to give us challenges, but how do we respond versus react? How do we reflect versus always receive? And when we can understand to be grounded in like who we are, our beliefs and our values, then we make decisions that's aligned, which is essentially it's on par, it's on brand, versus decision, which is convenient. So when I
Or by
understood,
default.
oh, by default, and we live by default, and we don't design. So once we're like taking those steps, our decisions become effective. And it's like the one of my favorite book is The Compound Effect. And I believe in the clarity
Mm.
compound. So each next each good right step, next step, leads to the best step. And then that becomes the compound effect of the clarity effect, which ultimately become this momentum of moving in the right direction. And then the same thing can happen if we're going in default. It's taking wrong steps or ineffective
Right.
steps that leads us to default.
Compounding clarity.
Yes.
Whoa. Because when I think about compounding, I think about it on financial terms. And I would dare to guess that a lot of people listening think of compounding, they think of compounding your money, compounding interest, compound returns on your investment, and all this stuff grows over time. The thing that just blew my mind that you just said was that if you take that same principle and that same growth, that over time you're compounding clarity, that is really an oh shit moment for me. I mean, seriously, it's crazy. The name of that book was what was it? What was it called again?
The compound effect.
The Compound Effect. You know, people here have heard me say this 1,000 times that our life is the product of the choices and decisions that we make.
Mhm.
And if people have a hard time with this, I ask them this: is the product of your life in the future the result of the decisions and choices you make from now on? And of course, they say yes. And so I think about that in terms of the quality of the choices and decisions that you make
Mhm.
and maximizing the quality of decisions that you make and the benefit. And then when you layer on top of that the clarity and compound clarity, if you think about it for 10 seconds, it kind of makes your head spin. It's really cool. So talk about just it's a simple word, like you said, clarity. Okay. How do people get there?
Mm. So it's super simple in theory, very hard in practicality because we have to
Got it.
go against the grain. And in my book that's coming out later this month, Finding Clarity, I talk about the C5 model. And in that C5 model, it's number one is capacity. Are we building the ability to hold what's in our space? And are we growing our ability to hold where we're going? And then number two is competency. Are we developing the skill sets to master what we're currently at? And are we growing the skill set to master where we're going and who we're becoming? And number three is courage. Um, are we acting in faith? Because courage is not the absence of fear, but the presence of faith. Are we taking bold, audacious steps to grow our capacity and to grow our competency? And it doesn't happen in comfort. And number four on the C5 model is connection. Who are we connected to? And what are we connected to that moves the needle forward to who we're becoming? And number five is curiosity. How are we exploring what's around us? And we've been taught in school to have the right answers, but the greatest inventions and discoveries is because of the great questions. What would it look like if we took metal and flew it across the sky and got people from one place to another place instead of like this horse and carriage? It was a question. So are we exploring the things around us because it moves us from the realities to the possibilities? And if we're growing our capacity, growing our competency, stepping in courage, building connections that leads us forward and staying curious, I believe we'll know that we're living in clarity and living by design because we'll know that'll be our baseline.
You just started by saying that the five C's were simple to understand, but really hard to do. I mean, that was a massive, massive understatement. Because it's tough, and courage is a tough thing. Courage is a really, really tough thing. Connection can be something that a lot of people fear. Competence, you got to grow it. Part of it is an application of knowledge, but collecting the knowledge. The capacity, you have to grow it, right? Um, the most interesting thing that you of those five to me is curiosity. It's curiosity because that is a muscle that a lot of us have forgotten, right? And part of
Mhm.
it is because of our upbringing. You know, curiosity killed the cat. Well, no one wants to be a dead cat, right? And so, okay, and so we knock the curiosity out of our childhood. And what you're saying is bring it back.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And it's fun. It's fun.
Yes.
But again, the curiosity kind of goes arm in arm with courage,
Yeah.
right? And you know that's where my superpower and your superpower comes in. You know, in asking the questions no one else wants to ask. I want to know the freaking answer. And the other thing that I've learned is that if I have the question, somebody else out there has a question too.
Yes. a
Right?
hundred
If
percent.
I want to say something, chances are someone else out there wants to say it too. And but you know, it's really, really tough. It's really tough. So capacity, competence, courage, connection, and curiosity leads to clarity.
Mhm.
Now, let's talk about the messy middle.
Mm.
Okay. You said you like to talk about the messy middle. What is the messy middle to you?
Yes. It is it is the tension between who am I currently and who am I becoming. And it's the constant tug of war of the past stories and beliefs that have shaped me up until this point and the new beliefs that's going to get me to that next point. So there's a form of a an emotional and internal death that is happening. It's a grieving because it's letting go what was and embracing what could be or what will be. So the messy middle is where I believe a lot of people don't give themselves enough time to get through, and they usually give up and revert back to default. It's like because that's more comfortable versus what is more
Absolutely.
growth oriented.
That is incredibly messy. There is probably nothing more messy in life than what you just described. Trying to get from where you are today to where you want to be, or to the vision of what you think you're supposed to be. And you know, that journey. So how do you help people? I mean, you talked about the five C's, but you know, I mean, you see it all the time. New Year's resolutions,
Yeah,
right? I am where I am. I know where I want to be, and people give up, right? It's just it's so so. What is a process that you use, or how do you keep people motivated? How do you keep people inspired? How do how do you help people figure out how to how how to make it through? I mean, how to fight through that muck and that mess? You know, are
yeah,
there you know, I mean, look at you. Look at you. I mean, look at your journey. I mean, you started off in the projects. I mean, going from the projects to where you are now, there's a lot of mess,
yeah.
right? Even getting from the projects to getting into athletics,
Mhm.
that might have been the biggest mess you've had in your life.
Yes.
So how so someone you're working with folks, you've got a whole audience of people here, right? What can people do? Are there little things, tips, tricks that people can do to to fight through that?
Yeah. That's such a good question. And I remember I was coaching one of my clients, and she shared with me the first time I coached her, she was diagnosed with schizophrenia and ADHD and multiple personality disorder. And she'd been seeing a psychiatrist before me and a therapist, and she's like, they're telling me what's wrong, but they're not telling me how to get through. And I flipped it and I asked her, I was like, when's the last time you cleaned your room in your house? And she was like, a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, how was that experience for you? She was like, oh, it was so good. And I was like, what made you decide that you needed to clean? She was like, one day I tripped over one of one of my belongings on the floor, and I was like, I need to change some things. And I was like, and when you started cleaning, what showed up for you? She was like, well, I felt a sense of calm and peace. And how that relates to this question, what is something people do? We've been so programmed and nurtured to consume. And when we start eliminating things, and I talk about this in the book, Finding Clarity, The Power of Subtraction. When we start eliminating the clutter, what don't I need in this season? We start getting clarity by default. If we change nothing else and start eliminating, oh, I haven't used this in the last year. This isn't effective anymore. This doesn't actually help me grow. If I just take that away, that automatically moves me forward.
No kidding. How simple is that? And and the thing about it is that while you were talking about that in my head, I was thinking of just all this crap I got in here, right? And whether it be beliefs or whether it be self-talk, let it go.
Yeah,
Let it go, right? And that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool because like you said, by definition, if you let go some of the useless stuff or the stuff that's damaging or the stuff that's just clogging your thinking, by definition, things become more clear,
it's
right?
like it's the analogy I like to use. It's pretty intense. It's like our toilet, right? Like if your toilet's backed up, like you can't use it anymore. But as soon as you flush it, as soon as you release it, and that takes courage. It takes courage. I remember talking to one client. Um, she was like, I don't have peace. And I was like, okay, that's valid. Why? She was like, I just don't know. And then I asked her this question. I was like, have you forgive the people who wounded you? And she said, no.
Ah,
And I was like, are you willing to? She was like, I don't know. And I was like, if you're unwilling to forgive someone who hurt you, you can't have peace. That's the trade-off. And she was like, wow. I was like, so that is your next step. So working on forgiving. So you have to make room for the other thing. You can't have both simultaneously. Anger, discontentment, bitterness, and peace and joy. You can't. I was like, well, as soon as you release that, as soon as you forgive that person and forgive the people, I promise you, you're going to feel a sense of peace start to enter, but you can't have both. And sometimes we try to live in duality, but sometimes we have to release and make sacrifices.
there is, oh my gosh. That I have never heard anybody describe the power of forgiveness the way you just did, David. I mean,
Mm,
um, and the reason why I say that is because, when you forgive somebody, you're not you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for you, right? A really good friend of mine who's also a pastor, he said that forgiveness is a greater miracle than the parting of the Red Sea.
mm,
You can't have peace if you have all the anger. There it's a duality that can't exist together. Uh, I just want to share a quick story. My
yes.
mom, before she passed away, she had lived in utter mental anguish and abuse with my dad for 35 years. And he eventually passed away. But before he passed away, one day he was in the hospital getting ready for a surgery that he had a 2% chance of surviving. And so he got out of surgery, and the doctor said, "We just have to see what happens. If he wakes up, he's in great shape. If he doesn't, then, you know, sorry." And so we were waiting in the waiting room, and my mom, I turned to my mom and I said, "Mom," I said, "you need to go see Dad." And she says, "Okay." I said, "And here's what you need to do. You need to go in there. He's asleep. You need to go in there, take his hand, and say these words. I forgive you for the decades of anguish and abuse you
Mm.
subjected me to." And she took her hand back like this, and she looked at me. She goes, "No." I can't do it. And so we went on, and the 30-minute conversation went on. And so she finally said, okay, fine, fine. I said, Mom, just do it. He's not going to hear you. He's not going to know what you're saying. You're just going to say those words. She went in. An hour went by, David. An hour went by. And I started getting a little bit concerned. And so she comes out, eventually, she comes out back into the waiting room. And when I looked up, I saw a woman that I almost didn't recognize. My mom,
Mm,
those words lifted 25 years off, 25 years of burden off of her shoulders. She looked 25 years younger and she was glowing. And she sat down next to me and I said, Mom, you did it. You did it. And she goes, yeah. She says, I said, how do you feel? She said, I feel peace.
mm,
I feel peace. And she says, what happened? And I said, Mom, I said, I don't know what happened. The Lord happened. But one thing that I know happened is that when you forgave Dad, you said, Dad, in those words, you said, I'm not going to carry this burden anymore. I'm giving it back to you. You take it. It was beautiful. It was unbelievable. I mean, it really was a miracle. And she lived many
mm.
years longer. And and so when you say that, uh, that forgiveness leads to peace. It is so, so true. Even in my own life, I've learned that. And I'm sure even in your life you've done it. And you've forgiven somebody. And you don't have to go to the person and say, I forgive you, right? I mean, in my mom's case, yeah, my dad was there, but he was unconscious. He didn't know anything that was going on, right? But it was a gift she gave to herself. That is
Yes.
really, really wonderful. And with that piece, I mean, you talk about a new level of clarity that she had in her life, right?
Hmm.
She let go of my dad and said, to hell with this. I'm not going to focus on this anymore. And all of a sudden, that just freed up a whole bunch of her mental and emotional space for good stuff, right?
Yeah. And that and thank you so much for sharing that. As you're sharing it, like it just literally brought tears to my eyes because my mom, my mom did that before she passed, and she was on the receiving end, and she was diagnosed with colon cancer, terminal.
Mm.
And she reached out to my father, who caused her a lot of pain, and she said, "I forgive you." And I know, and like her transition of death was so beautiful, um, as beautiful as it can become. And when we think about clarity, clarity doesn't live in chaos and constraint and bondage. So a lot of people want to go to that next step, but it doesn't live in chaos. So there's some things that we need to deal with. And one of the things when I coach up my clients, we deal with the roots first before we start focusing on the fruits. Because oftentimes as high achievers are like, what can I accomplish? What can I accomplish? But if we're producing fruits that are rotten or toxic, it makes more rotten and toxic things. And that way we bleed on people who've never hurt us. But if we're focusing on the roots, what do I need to heal and work on within? And then as I take my next step, now I'm moving from my amygdala, survival, flight or flight, to my prefrontal cortex. And I'm like, okay, I can discern what is in alignment, what is good for me, what moves me forward, and what no longer serves me. And then making the decisions from a place of healing versus a decision versus hurt. And it's just like going to the grocery store. When we're hungry, we make poor decisions and we put everything in our cart. But when
Yeah.
we're full, we're like, oh, I really don't need that. I don't need that.
Yeah,
So
that's
like
true.
it
That's true.
so yes.
Yeah, that is crazy. That is crazy. What, one more thing? Give me one more thing. You said that forgiveness leads to clarity. What else? One more thing.
One more thing. All right, John. OQP. OQP. Only quality people. If you live by that, then my grandfather would always say, tell me who your friends are, I'll tell you where your future go. And that is something I live by. Only quality people. And it's not a personal thing, it's a purposeful thing. So I've had a lot of exit conversations with a lot of good people. And it wasn't malice or it wasn't hateful or it wasn't even toxic. It was like, I love you. Here's where I'm going. I would love for you to come with me, but if you don't choose to, that's okay. But I can no longer engage in this type of relationship and conversation. And the people I've had that conversation with is just like, I respect that. So they know that it's a bridge, but it's not a bridge that I'm crossing because I have somewhere to go and I can't have low frequency conversations. I need to talk about big things of how we're going to change the world, how we're going to serve people, how we're going to love, how we're going to give. I just can't keep up with the latest news currents, the current news. So only quality people, when we're surrounded by those people in our ecosystem, our life naturally just elevates. And as an athlete, I've learned when I'm next to a high performer, my performance automatically goes up.
Yeah, if you're
But if
golfing with
I'm
Tiger Woods, your golf is going to go up, right? Your golf game is going to get better. If for no other reason like that you don't want to look like an idiot.
yes,
Right? Yeah, only quality people. And something you said, it's not a personal thing, it's a purposeful thing.
yes,
It is a choice, it is a decision because, I don't want to sound like everything we're doing is taking advantage of people. But the fact of the matter is, like you said, you want to change the world, you want to help people, you want to change people's lives. And so those are, you want to the stepping stones you want to take, and the people you want to associate are the people who are going to support that and continue to move forward because you have clarity on what you want to do. And you're absolutely right. Your mom, perfect example, right? Only quality people. So she got you into sports.
yeah,
And and then all of a sudden you start finding your balance and able to walk on your own, and you start bringing other quality people in your life, right? Because life is a series of stepping stones. And and you designed it.
yeah.
You've designed your life. You are not living by default. You're not living just your life is not the product of everything that's happening to you.
Mm-mm.
Your life is the product of the decisions that you've made to move forward with clarity and purpose. Is that about right?
That I could not have said it any better. Your life is the sum, and I'm paraphrasing, the sum of the decisions you made, not the product of what's happened to you. And it's easy to tell our story of victim or this is what's happened. And eventually that gets sympathy, but that doesn't lead to breakthrough and freedom. That just leads to like the mental loop of stagnation versus transformation. So
And
that was fun.
that sympathy becomes addictive. It becomes an
Yeah,
addiction, right?
yeah.
So I wrote this book. I wrote this book, American Grit, and it's about the Japanese American internment slash concentration camps during World War II. And it's about young men who volunteered out of those camps to fight and die for the United States Army, who put them in those camps to begin with, and kept their families imprisoned while these guys went off to war, and a lot of them died fighting for the United States. And they went on to become some of the most decorated war heroes in the history of this country. But aside from being an absolute kick-ass story, true story, okay, it's also a story of refusing victimhood. It's also a story of refusing to blame anybody for their circumstances and taking responsibility for their own lives. They made that choice. Now, of course, there are a lot of people that blame the United States government. There are a lot of people that said, no, I'm not going to fight for this country. But these guys made the decision that they didn't want to spend the rest of their lives in a concentration camp. They wanted to prove that they were as equally deserving to be recognized as Americans as anybody else.
Mm.
And so part of my message in the book is stop the blame game. Because when you blame others, you give up your power and it's a choice. But when you take responsibility, you empower yourself, right? And it's a choice. So David, this whole conversation has just been about, I mean, it has been amazing. I mean, we're distilling, you and I, mostly you, have just kind of helped to distill all the noise and all the bullshit and all the stuff that other people want us to believe, you know,
Yes.
of entitlements, I mean, no, it's your choice. Don't don't live by other people's decisions on
Hmm.
how they feel you should live your life. You're amazing.
And for you, thank you. I received that. And for you to articulate that is a mirror of how you view yourself. So that those kind words that you just shared about me is a representation of you. So like you are amazing, and it takes an amazing individual to see another amazing. And that's clarity. Because only until your eyes are open to see can you actually see the things that reflect how your values are. So that's beautiful. So the credit goes back to you.
Well, thank you very much. No, but wow, wow, I don't think I've ever had anybody say anything nicer nicer to me than that. So, but thank you. Um, oh my gosh, we have how long have we been on? I mean, we've been on for 40 minutes. I mean,
Yeah.
this has been incredible. And okay, so last thing, last thing. You say that clarity is a skill, not a trait. Okay? And you say that anyone can learn to activate it and cultivate it. Talk about that as we close this out.
That's a great question. And clarity is not something that we're born with. It's something that we develop. So
It's a
anyone
muscle.
can, it's a muscle. Anyone can develop clarity. Anyone can develop wisdom. Anyone can develop discernment. And how we do it is listening, studying those who have it, and then applying when we're giving opportunities. So I'm a boxer and I played football in college. And one of the things I learned about training is I don't, the weights doesn't change, I become stronger. So in essence, same thing with clarity. Life doesn't make become easier, we become more efficient in navigating it. And one of my favorite movies is Karate Kid, when he's like wax on wax off, and just like
Right.
it's so hard, it's this silly thing, he's just like doing this, and then he's just everything becomes slow for him. And it's not like the fighter skill set got down, it was just like no, it's he knows how to navigate, it's he flows with life versus he forces life. So we can become that proficient, just like a high level athlete. They wasn't born to perform that way. They learn it, they train, and I believe we can train to be more clear, to have more clarity conversations, to seek out people who live a clear life and to be curious. So I believe it's a muscle that we develop, and it is a muscle if we don't develop, we actually lose. And that's living a life by
Yes.
default.
Yes. Folks, I don't even know what to add to that. I mean, that's just crazy. That's just crazy. It's a muscle. It's a muscle, right? And it's your choice to build that muscle. Just like if you want to be world class at clarity, which will help you become world class at defining your purpose, right? You have to build it. You have to train it. You have to keep going, right? That's where the grit and the perseverance comes in, right? But capacity, competence, courage, connection, and curiosity. Start with curiosity. Start with curiosity. Be curious about this conversation. Go back, rewind this tape. Well, it's not a tape. Go back. I just aged myself. Go back and listen to this again because I promise you, this is one of those episodes where you're going to listen to it again, and you're going to hear different stuff. You're going to hear different stuff, and you're going to listen to it for a third time, and you're still going to hear different stuff. And it's going to blow you away in different ways. David, my friend, I would love to have you back sometime.
Yes, I would be honored to come
You
back.
are,
This,
this has been a wonderful conversation. And I say that because it's been a wonderful conversation for me. And again,
mm,
if it's been a wonderful conversation for me, I know that it's been a wonderful conversation for a lot of people who are listening right now. David, I love you. God bless you. Thank you for all you're doing, for making the world better. I believe that when you help one person, you lift the world. When you lift others, you lift the world, and you're obviously doing that. And to the extent that you can help people find that clarity and find their own purpose in life, I mean, holy cow, what better way is there to do our part to make the world a little bit better, right?
I
So
received that.
thank you. Thank you for all that you're doing. Everybody out there, thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. Please share this. Please share this. Someone out there, lots of people out there need to hear David's message. I love you. God bless you. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.